Welcome back to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and today I'm delighted to be joined by Peter McGackie. Welcome back, Peter. How are you doing?
Doing very well, very well.
You're doing well, and you are looking forward, I'm guessing, to Saturday's game against Wolves, where I'm thinking we might start getting a sense of what Brendan sees as his first team. I'm hoping that anyway. And you ask yourself about the new signings. We look at some of the players who perhaps will still join between now and the end of the transfer window, and everything else in between. But I'm going to bring this up because I think a lot of people were kind of shocked and saddened to hear of the untimely passing of Sinead O'Connor yesterday. An unbelievable talent, and not without her troubles. It was very unfortunate to hear that she passed away yesterday. So thoughts and prayers for everybody who's involved, friends and family there. An incredible talent. I'll never forget the album that Nothing Compares to You was on. I was listening to it on my way home last night. Unbelievable talent, Pierre.
Mm-hmm. I was flicking through Twitter, and I think it was Conor McGregor had put it up because she sang it one of his when it was entrances at the UFC, and it's weird. You always sort of find your information through Twitter just because it's so instant, and and it's just the days that go by and you just don't think it's happening, and then you see something like that, and it's just like, whoa! It's the age and the sort of like it's people that you sort of forget about in the back of your mind. You just don't think they're just getting on with their life and everything's going fine, and then something like that happens. So it's pretty tragic.
It is. And I'm trying to think of the album name. I think it was I Do Not Want What I Haven't Got. Amazing album. She obviously duetted with Shane McGowan, tremendous version of Haunted, and also duetted with Ian Brown, Damien Dempsey, various others. And yes, she will be sorely missed. We will be talking a wee bit more about Ireland because we're going there. We're all off to Ireland on Saturday. It's the Aviva. And I think even though we got a bit of a melting, a bit of a pasting from Yokohama F Marinos 6-4, I think this is the biggest test so far in the pre-season when we face Wolves on Saturday. It's in Ireland, as you know. Do you think we are going to get a sense of what Brendan is thinking in terms of what his side is going to look like? He's starting 11, Peter?
I think you have to. It's all well and good. You can use the other games, to expand your brand and really try players out and give them a few minutes in their legs, which that's what pre-season is all about. I think the season's coming upon us quite quickly, so I think you're going to have to look at getting roughly maybe about 8 of the players that are going to start in that starting game and get a level that you're looking for.
Sorry, you just disappeared for a second there, Peter. And it's that moment where you think, right, I can either just sit here in silence or wait and see if you come back. And as soon as I spoke, obviously you came right back there. So sorry that I interrupted you there, mate.
That's all right.
Loads of talk about signings, and I completely get that. I've got not a theory as such, but I've got a view on the 5 that have come in already. We'll be talking a wee bit more about our new Polish centre-half. But the other 4 players that were brought in prior to that, Tillio, Holm, Yang and Kwon. I get the sense, Peter, that these were deals very much already in the works. You get the idea that maybe the 2 South Korean boys would have been unveiled this week when we were in South Korea. That was the plan. Tillio himself said in his press conference that he had been aware of Celtic's interest for a couple of years. I get the sense that those 4 players, they were already in the works. They could be called legacy signings. Obviously, Brendan Rodgers has okayed them. He's ticked it. He's allowed it to happen. And I think as of Nurowski and any other players that we get from now until the end of the transfer window, I would hope and I would expect those to be far more Brendan Rodgers signings, Peter.
Aye. It seems that that's the way forward for Celtic. They're just going to do their sort of looking at the different markets and bringing certain players in at a certain value. But I can't look at anybody yet, possibly Nurowski, if that's the way you say it. I think it's Nurowski. Possibly him, that would be the first signing that you would maybe mark down as Brendan Rodgers. But going forward, I think you would look for maybe 2 or 3 more that are going to be clearly his signings.
Well, I mean, over the years, we have got into the habit, I guess, of talking about players who are maybe not ready for the first team as projects. And you look at the age group of the four who came in prior to yesterday, and they're all, in their early 20s, Peter. So you get that kind of idea that these guys may not have a massive contribution to make this season, but perhaps in seasons ahead. But I said yesterday, I do reckon one or two of them might surprise us. And, as the season develops, you'll be looking at a player like Tilio and saying, wow, what a bargain he's been for £1.5 million, a guy that we brought in kind of under the radar, and he really is contributing. And I do expect one or two of them to come through in that respect. The other ones have been called, I guess, statement signings, marquee signings. I would just bracket them as Brendan Rodgers signings. If Brendan Rodgers is a guy that fancies them, that identifies them, then I think that, everything else will follow. They will probably be more of a statement signing. So I'm going to bring up some of the comments. Double Denim, straight off the bat on the YouTube channel, you are commenting. If anyone wants to make a comment, get onto that YouTube channel and subscribe to it, and you'll be able to get involved in the live chat. Obviously, when myself and guys like Peter and all the other contributors are chatting away, the conversation is raging on, Peter, and a lot of it is missed during the 1 hour broadcast. But yeah, you can come in, you can be part of that Acsom community. And Double Denim says, I'd love a statement signing or two, but given we have a strong first team squad when fit, who would we replace in the starting 11? Who drops out? Right, it's a good question, that, because I think we've all got opinions on it. I'm pretty strong in 3 of the positions that I think need to be strengthened. And if we were bringing in a player, you'd want them to be a first pick. And, I'm going to throw out the 4th one, because the 4th one is a striker. So I'll start with the 4th one, Peter. Going into this pre-season, I was pretty fixed in my view that we needed a 3rd striker, because Kyogo has been talismanic for 2 seasons. When he's injured, obviously, the backup is O, who's got quite a good record in terms of minutes played and goals scored. But then beyond that, going into this pre-season, I was thinking we were very, very short in that position. We would need to play someone like Maida out of position. Then we see him playing centre forward, and he was brilliant. So do we still need a centre forward? What's your view on that?
I'm not really sure. It's no a position that I've thought, when you're looking at the whole squad, it's necessity to get a striker in. I think that would, like you say, if there was 3-4 options, that would be the 4th, in my opinion. It's just because you've got players that are sort of versatile and they can move in different positions. But it all comes down to the players that we've got in. Telio, Yang, these type of wingers that they need to hit the ground running, or certainly a couple of them do. Because if they don't, then you're going to have a squad full of sort of players that are needing to be bedded in, and we need first team regular starting players to push people. So hopefully if they start well, then we've got a wee bit of sort of leeway with where we can play people like Maeda and stuff. Maeda is quality. He's going to be a big asset going into Europe, I think, with his pace. But you look at majority of the games you're going to play at Parkhead or even in the SPL, they're going to be block defences. And does that suit Maeda's game? Because can he hold it up? He's a runner and he runs in behind and he's got pace, and he finishes off moves, and that's generally what Kyogo does as well. O's the sort of different style of player. He can come on and put himself about, hold the ball up, but we still don't know if he's got enough quality yet. So it might be interesting. Well, Ayeti's always kicking about, isn't he? So you can always he offers something different. But I don't know. I mean, can you get creative? Do you want to put maybe somebody like Haksabanovic up there? I don't know if he could sort of do that sort of thing. So I think if you could spot someone for decent money, that's not going to cost you too much, no big outlay. They're going to come in as maybe the second, third choice. It's good to have the options. And what I was saying about when we were playing the pre-season stuff, when we play Wolves, that's when we're going to be looking to see, I think, the players or the team close to sort of full strength when we go into the start of the season. Like I said, with the Japanese tour, it was mostly just get minutes in the legs and stuff. So it will be interesting to see, because I think we'll get a good idea of how Brendan Rodgers is looking to shape the squad, and be interesting to see the shape that he plays, because I think there's a couple of ways that we could go with this, and it all depends on the type of players we have to our disposal.
Yeah, I think you're right in that we go to Portugal for the warm weather camp, and while we're there, we play 2 bounce games, one of which was very secretive indeed, behind closed doors. The second of which we were able to see the goals on Celtic TV's unique angle. But those 2 games, the Portuguese trip, that was all about fitness. That's all it was about. The results were pretty meaningless. It was just about getting the game time in the legs. Then, like you say, we go to Japan, and that was all about the brand. I mean, even Brendan Rodgers spoke about that, taking the brand over to Japan. I think there was a different kind of feeling about it after Ange left, in that it was far more to do with Brendan Rodgers trying to assess the squad and get a right good look at a lot of players that he really wouldn't have known a great deal about when he came back. So those 2 games were slightly different than they would have been planned. And then you get Wolves, and then you start looking at Wolves and thinking, well, that's a proper pre-season friendly where, like you say, you might start seeing something developing in terms of the shape and the personnel, because we've seen the inverted fullback it's been there, it's been present, mainly on the left-hand side, and probably because Iwata, for 2 reasons. Iwata's not a natural right back, and he's not played the inverted fullback position. Therefore, I can understand why Brendan didn't, ask him to fulfil that role, whereas Taylor and Bernabe have done it, and you could see that they were playing that position in the 2 games in Japan. Loads of great points coming in, but you mentioned Albion Ajeti, so I'm going to jump to Ajeti before I go to any of the other positions. I spoke about it on Monday when I took a wander around paradise, Peter. I spoke about Ajeti and the fact that, I've read some comments on the socials and praising him because he's going to fight for his place. I don't actually see it like that. I think Albion Ajeti's Celtic career is finished. It's absolutely finished, right? I mean, he's played now under 3 managers before Brendan Rodgers came in, if you want to count John Kennedy, who took the last dozen games of the season. And, it's just not worked out. He scored 9 goals, 2 seasons, even when he's gone out on loan. You see a player like even Mikey Johnson goes out, made an impact on loan, Peter, to such a degree that he starts getting full international recognition for Ireland. Ajeti did nothing. He went out on loan and he did nought. And he comes back and, he's going to stay. That's what his view is. He's going to stay. He's the type of player that actually could prevent us from bringing in another striker. Because at the moment, when you throw him in the mix, then you think, you know what, we're probably top heavy at this moment in time. You bring in another one and we're probably going to have an extra body. So he, like Chris Julian before him, is preventing us from kind of developing and moving on. And you take that decision out of his hands. He needs to leave the building. It could be a 1 year loan deal. Sorry there, Peter. You dropped out and came right back in. That's StreamYard just playing funny buggers with us. Or it could well be a permanent deal, but you probably need to tear up his contract and lose money on him. What's your thoughts on it? Because I don't see it as a positive, him wanting to stay at the club. I actually just see it as somebody drawing a wage for a year.
Well, Paul, I came on here. I was depressed last week talking about Celtic, so I was trying to be positive, but you've brought me right back down, so it's fine. No,
sorry, mate.
I completely agree. No, he is there's certain players you just don't want to see anymore. They've had enough chances, and it started so well. I remember when he started, and it was that sort of poacher type finisher, and you were like, right, we've got somebody here, and then it just sort of fell off a cliff, and it's really hard for players to resurrect their careers when it doesn't start well at Celtic. So I think his time's come and gone, and it's Celtic's problem now. They gave him the deal. They paid the money for him when they could have had somebody like Tony for Brentford. So that's something that they have to take on the nose. And if it comes to, because I don't think Brendan Rodgers should make it clear that he won't be playing him. So either you can buy someone else and take the hit with the money, or rip up his contract, take a hit with some money. But at the end of the day, it's cost you money, this deal, so you just have to accept it. And whether you keep an unhappy player about the squad, which Brendan Rodgers will only want, or you get rid of him or get him out on loan to let him know that there's sort of no future here. So that's up to him, whether he wants to stay and not play and maybe train with B team or whatever he wants to do, or actually get out on loan and try and do something with his career. But again, that is Celtic have to learn from that and have to learn from their mistakes. And I think they have to a good degree with Ange Postecoglou and the players that they've brought in since. But you've always got a wee bit of a bloody nose with these type of transfers, and you have to beware it doesn't happen again. But I would he needs to leave for his own good and for the good of Celtic.
Yeah, no professional footballer can go for a year being inactive without it affecting him in some way, Peter. And I think it's also, it's a cautionary tale for myself included, people who just want you want a big name signing, you want a statement signing, as we've been calling them, because it doesn't always work out. And I think I've not actually done it yet, but I mentioned yesterday that if you go back to the original tweet when Celtic announced Ayeti's signature and capture, I'm pretty sure a few people have deleted their responses to that. Everybody was delighted when we signed him. You're signing a £5 million striker from the EPL who had been really prolific over in Bal. And he was an absolute flop. I mean, that's just the bottom line of it. He's not going to make an impact at Celtic. He's not going to be one of these guys who's going to be resurrected by Brendan Rodgers. I think there are a few players who will be. He's not one of them. And we need to get him out the building, I'm afraid. And people might think that's being harsh. Yes, I know he's a human being. But you know this, it would be worse for him as a professional to be sitting about kicking his heels for a year. It could really affect his career. It's hard for them to then get started again. I remember speaking to an ex-pro who said it's like, parking your car on a steep hill and then trying to get it going again. That stop-start nature of it isn't good for the footballer. Now, ASM1, am I the only one who doesn't want KT back? What's your reasons for it? The reason I wouldn't want him back is just short-termism, Peter. There's no future in bringing him back. You're filling a hole for a season, aren't you? That's all you're doing if you bring Kieran Tierney back. And it would be very expensive as well.
It would. I mean, just pure plain Celtic fan. If that deal was there to happen, I would take it. I mean, I would love to see him back. And I think if I put him in a back four with potentially a new goalkeeper, Tierney left back, Johnson right back, Carter Vickers and Nerowski or Starfelt, I'm happy with that back four. I think that's a solid back four, especially for Europe. But I get what you're saying. There's pros and cons to each thing. I don't think it will happen. I think, there was talk in Newcastle coming in from. He's young. He can be potentially bought for 20, 30 million. That's a great player to have for an English Premier League club, and it doesn't even cost them that much money. So I don't really see how it could work financially with him coming back, or just sort of the technicalities of him actually being able to come back when there's other clubs lurking about. But it's a hard one. I mean, I would like a new left back, but I think we need an improvement in that. I mean, a solid first teamer. Like, you look at Taylor and Bernabei, to me, they should be. And listen, whatever I say, I'm not having a go at how they've played and stuff. It's just that when I look at Taylor, I think he's been brilliant for us, absolutely brilliant. But if you're asking me to be brutally honest, in Europe, I think we need an improvement. So I would be happy for him to be a second or a backup choice to fight it out with another left back. I look at the right hand side. I'm sort of Ralston, sort of 50-50 for me. But when I look at Johnston, he is for me a quality right back. So we've not got that much problem in that area. But I think we need a solid, strong, quality left back. If that's Kieran Tierney, or if it's someone else that we can find from a different market and get a good deal on, then I'd be happy to see that. But
left back is one of the positions I've got on my list as well, for that very reason, Peter. And I'm loath to write off players like Bernabe, for example. He's not on that list that I made of players that I think should be moved on this pre-season. I'm not quite ready to throw the towel in on guys like Bernabe or Kobayashi, even though I don't think we've seen enough from their appearances so far to suggest that they are going to be first picks. The other positions, just to run through these as well, see if you agree or disagree, Peter, that I've got. I do think we need a left winger. Now, that's not necessarily to replace Dyson Maeda. I think Maeda's been superb. I was delighted when he signed his new contract. He's shown us another kind of angle to his game. Playing through the middle, he was brilliant over in Japan. And you would be really confident that he's going to give you something different if you needed to put him in there. But I do think we're short on the left wing. The players that we've got there, Mikey Johnson, I would actually move him on. Haksabanovic, really unconvinced at the moment on Haksabanovic. And James A. Forrest, who I thought played really well against Gambo Osaka in the first half, but his game time's going to be, it's not going to be few and far between, but he's not going to be a first pick at this stage of his career and with the lack of football he's played in the last couple of seasons. So a left winger, I think, is a position that we could strengthen in as well. We have got 2 right wingers who were brought in who can play on the left. And maybe that will prevent us again because it will appear that we're already covered there, Peter. But it just seems that, Abada, who will come back to, seems to be firing on all cylinders, and I hope that continues. Maeda, yeah, I still rate Maeda highly, but he drops out and the drop in quality is pretty vast for me for his replacement.
Yeah, I think again, it's hard to tell because you've not seen a lot of the players we've brought in, but we do need that type of Jota replacement. We need a tricky guy, a tricky winger, because Maeda isn't that. He's speed and he works hard. And I've got a feeling that Rodgers might be looking to play him more through the middle. I think he's his sort of maybe striker as well as Kyogo. I think he will. I don't think he'll drop Kyogo for him, but I think he'll be looking to maybe use the 2 of them up front and Maeda at certain points. But it'd be good if somebody needed to come off, Maeda could move into the middle and then bring a quality sort of left winger on. Because I feel like people like Abada, people like Maeda, they're not that tricky. But they're so direct and they've got a lot of speed. And that's a great asset, especially in Europe. I mean, we can break away Kyogo, Maeda, Abada with that speed. But against teams in Scotland, you need a wee bit of trickery. You need to be able to beat a couple of guys and the way Jota done. And if we can maybe find someone like that, because you don't want these other boys having to come in and, the pressure that's going to be on them to perform. And we don't know if they can yet. We don't know if they can handle that pressure. So this is where you're talking about a statement signing. I don't know what a statement signing is, but Rodgers has worked with plenty of high quality players in England, and I'm sure he's aware of a lot of people that are, maybe want their careers resurrected. I'm not averse to. I think we can. I do think we've got a chance to sort of mix it up a wee bit when we're talking about making strides in Europe. That might be 1 or 2 players with that sort of loan to buy option, or you know what I mean, like the real high quality players that have just maybe took a dip in their career, and you can resurrect it. It's worked before, and it can work again. And just look at Jota and Carter Vickers. So if we were against that, we would have been against them. So we can get 2 or 3 players like that are really going to heighten the standard in the squad. So I do agree. I think I don't know if it's the same sort of list as you. I think the positions that I would be thinking of, it's just because you get a wee bit excited when you hear some rumours about goalkeepers and stuff. And again, Joe Hart can do a job, but what I'd be looking for is a younger goalie that's going to last us for 3-4 years, and then we can possibly sell on. Because inevitably Hart is going to leave. He's 36, going on to 37. You're like, you can't just keep these players forever and indefinitely. So you need to look to improve that position, and I think it should be this year. When we've got a great position of strength and we've got money in the bank, this is the time to strike. So goalkeeper, left back, left winger, and I think a dynamic, big, strong, power. Again, we don't know what one of the South Korean boys will look like because he does look big, but again, add more physicality into the team with a big, solid midfielder. I think you've seen what Rangers are going to do. They're going to come at us with power and height. So we have to, and even in Europe, you've got big, strong, athletic players, so you have to add that to the team. It's just something that has to be done, because footballing terms, Rangers will not beat Celtic when it comes to football. So the only sort of thing that they've got to come at is power and height. So if we add that to our team, then we should be unbeatable.
Yeah, and Alan Morrison spoke about it in the European sense, in that, you know, the teams we're coming up against in midfield, Peter, are far more physical than us, far more athletic than us. And you look at the talent we've got in our midfield, and I think they are all very talented, but that wee element of the game can obviously push us on. And I take what you're saying there about who will be our biggest challengers next season. There's no real doubt about that. But it's all about physicality for them. You know, and I remember the flip of that was when Martin O'Neill came in, and we took that, and we weren't just bringing in big guys because of their stature, because the players we signed were phenomenal footballers, John Hartson and Valharan and Baldy and Chris Sutton, etc. But I can see where you're going with that, and I don't disagree with you at all. So a bit of physicality, but goalkeeper is the other position that I would mention, mainly because of the fact that not only have we lost two goalies permanently from the squad, Hazard and Barkas, and absolutely no going to cry into my cornflakes about any of the two goalies. Toby Owulayemi he's away, so he's going to be one of the players that's part of our Austrian partnership. So Admira Wacker, he's away there on loan. And then it leaves us with just the three keepers in Siegrist, Bain and Hart. I just look at that and think, Hart gets injured, I'm not going into a big game confident. And that's my big issue. And then if you're going to go into the transfer market to buy a goalie, don't buy a third choice, don't buy a second choice, buy somebody who's going to be challenging Hart. Kevin McCluskey wrote a brilliant blog. It's on Acsom.net. Go and have a look at it. And he's done a bit of scouting himself. He does a bit of scouting for various blogs, etc., over in Hungary. And he's gone in and he's identified three goalies, having set up a few criteria, and three goalkeepers who he reckons could be good shouts for Celtic within our bracket as well. So have a read of that. That is the other area that I think we need to strengthen. Before we go into anything else, and I'm going to bring up as many comments as possible, who's all going to the Aviva? Let us know if you're going to be going. It will be a great game. It will be great to see Celtic over in Ireland again. Jungle Lion, no more projects. Get the first starters in next. I think we will. I think the only reason that it's not happened yet is because of the managerial change, and Rodgers wants to assess the squad. The four that were already there, they weren't really identified by Rodgers, but he's obviously rubber stamped them. And I think yesterday is the turning point for us to bring in these starters that Jungle Lion referred to. But one thing I found really interesting was yesterday the signatures of two ex-players, Jack Hendry and Moussa Dembele, who have also gone over to Saudi, Peter. It's something we've spoken a fair bit about. And what was quite interesting for me was the transfer fee for Jack Hendry, €6.9 million. Since leaving Celtic, he has been involved in transfers totaling 10.3 million quid. And that's a guy that couldn't get a kick of the ball at Celtic. The Scottish centre half, he's always in and around the Stevie Clark's international squad. And as I say, he's joined that guy, Stevie Gerrard, and Moussa Dembele, Al Ettifaq. At the moment, money is no object, Peter. They're throwing it, at a lot of imports. This is one of the things that to establish a game, often these nations will do that. They'll throw money at it. And I'll go back to the NASL, who, many Celtic players ended up going and dipping their toe in there. Harry Hood, Bobby Lennox, who else went? Jimmy Johnson went over there. Andy Lynch went over. But they were buying players. They were buying in players like Pele and Gerd Müller, Franz Beckenbauer and George Best and Johan Cruyff. And obviously, it's all about the glitz and the glam, and it's all about trying to get, broadcasting rights and buying into a sport that they're not renowned for, Peter. How long will it last, though? Is the passion there from the people that are signing the checks, right? Is the passion for football there for this to be a long-term kind of situation? Are they here to stay? Is it a flash in the pan?
I don't have a clue. I mean, I think it's really a big, it's a political sort of move, and I'm not really that big on politics. So, but I think it's a sort of attempt at sport. It's a way to get sort of sports washing in a way. It's like getting players over to say, oh look, our country isn't so bad. People are coming to play here, but it's also to get sort of a bit political power. I think I'm not too up on it, but however long it takes them to do that, then they'll keep throwing money at it. And again, it's not as if they're going to run out of money anytime soon, so they can go indefinitely. And but it's the weirdest summer to see this happening. You thought maybe one or two, and then because again, like you say, some of the American leagues and Canadian leagues and stuff, they used to sort of buy players at the tail end of their career. But now you're starting to get people in their prime or close to their prime. Talk of Verratti going, £270 million bid for Mbappe, 50 million a year, I think, or it was 30 million a week. I'm not sure. It was just unbelievable numbers. You read the breakdowns of like it's €19 a second. I think he was making a bit like Addy on this show.
Yeah, exactly. Don't give away the trade secrets.
Sorry. I don't make it. But I know it's just crazy money. It's close to it will ruin football. But again, we don't have any power to stop it. It's up to governments to stop it, or like bigger leagues to step in to try and come up with a sort of situation where this doesn't happen. So we sort of just have to sit back and watch almost. But I don't think anybody will be watching the league. You're just interested in who's going to the league, but I don't think I'll be interested in actually watching it. But it's scary numbers, and whether it comes to an end, whether it's a 2, 3, 4 year thing, and then everybody sort of moves back, then we'll never know.
I remember speaking to Andy Lynch, who went over there, over to the NASL, that was, and he said the reason it didn't really work that time, because I think that was like the second run. They tried it the second time, and eventually they got it right. He says the reason it didn't work during his time is there was no investment really, or not enough investment in the kind of youth development of their own players. So you would go to a team and you would have your 3 or 4 big star players. Bobby Moore went over there as well, I think. But then the actual level and the standards of the homegrown players was miles away, just miles away. And they weren't focusing on the academy and the development of players at that time. And as I say now, it's completely different. But, the reason I use it is to kind of link into some of the other players that there was probably a point last season, if you'd said to me that Jota was going to leave, I'd been devastated, Peter, absolutely devastated. But then you try and look at it from as balanced a viewpoint as possible. And you look at how good that money is going to be for Celtic. By the way, this is before you look at whether or not we should be dealing with the Saudis and contributing to the sports washing that you refer to. We won't get into that today. But the deal itself with Jota was such a good deal for Celtic financially that we couldn't say no. And I don't think any of us would have said no to selling Jota for 25 million quid, potentially more than that with add-ons, etc. So it's happened. What I don't want to happen, though, Peter, is for it to happen again this pre-season. And we did a podcast just the other week there where I was talking about some of the players who, isn't it time we got them on the long-term deals? Because we'd already done the deals with Kyogo, Maeda and McGregor. And the 3 players I mentioned were Carter Vickers, Hatate and O'Reilly, because they are going to get interest. Abada is going to get interest. These are 4 players I'm a bit fearful for, actually, in terms of if the carrot is big enough, Celtic will take it. And they're the 4 players I'm a bit concerned about. Isn't it time we try to get them in longer term improved deals?
I think when you look back at the players that we've had in the past and you say, if we had kept the players, because obviously a lot of our players had left sporadically, and you're like, if they had stayed and became, one unit, 11 players, for example, Tierney, Van Dijk and all that sort of thing, you're like, we could have made great strides in Europe. We could have been a team that got to a Europa League final or, last 16, last 8 of the Champions League, potentially, if you kept their players. So that's what Celtic has been, the problem with Celtic has been in the past. Obviously, we're a selling club. We have to look at taking, but when you're in this position, when we're not in debt, we've got profit in the bank, then you should maybe look to double down in the players you've got and actually create a strong team that's going to last for 3-4 seasons,
Yeah.
and then to break it up after that. So while you've got players in the building that are doing the job for you, are winning trebles, why risk losing them and then having to replace them with unknown quantities? So Carter Vickers, to me, one of the best centre backs I've seen in a long time for Celtic. You're calm when he's on the ball, and you're calm when the ball's coming into the box. You fancy him to clear it, get his head on it, block it. Hatate, he's just going to go. His levels are just going to go up and up and up. He's clearly, like, on his day, clearly the best midfielder in the country, I think. And O'Reilly, and he again, O'Reilly, the age of him, the physique, the level that he could possibly reach. You're not taking a risk by signing these guys on for a few more years. You can always sell them. Again, we know that contracts don't mean too much if the money's right. So invest in these players, invest in this team, sign them up, and see. And again, when you've got a good winning team on the pitch, the fans come out in force and follow you. So there's no sort of risk to Celtic by signing them up. So I think we should be looking at doing that. People that have proven it in the past and will prove it going forward.
It's an interesting one to look at, though. Like you say there, that group of players, if you are able to, we know that you're not, then you look at a team that would be strong enough to make that progression. Forster, Van Dijk, Tierney. It's incredible over the piece. Dembele, Edouard, Kyogo, who'd get a game up top. I'm not sure. It depends what formation you play, I guess. We have apparently got a partnership now with Admira Wacker. We mentioned it earlier because Toby Owoleyemi was one of the first players who has gone over there for a season-long loan alongside Matthew Anderson. There's a suggestion that another two will be joining them, perhaps Ben McPherson, who we've seen performing over in Japan. And also Joey Dawson. Remember Joey Dawson came in as a young guy from Scunthorpe. He made his first team debut against St Johnstone on Boxing Day a couple of seasons ago. And he has been scoring for fun really in the B team. But, there's a certain group of players who going back to playing the B team next season is not going to help the development. So if we've got this partnership with a club who, albeit they're playing in the second tier of their own country's league, it's going to be a better, you would think, a better standard than the fifth tier of Scottish football. And I like the tie-in. I think it's good for young players. And if we can get 4 to half a dozen guys out there playing regular football week in, week out, then it's going to be brilliant for them. How many of them will come back and become Celtic players? I don't know. How many will it be worth the whole partnership for that to happen? You would hope one a season coming back to Celtic. But that's there to be seen. And I think the last time we tried this, there might have been other partnerships in other areas of the world, but we certainly did have a partnership back in the early 2000s or the kind of 2010s with Ujpest Dosha, and Willie McStay went over there to manage them. He had obviously been part of that incredible Celtic reserve team that had won something like 37 leagues in a row or something, Peter. Just kept winning the league. And Willie McStay went over there and he took a player over. I'm going to say it was a guy called Mark Miller. Somebody might want to correct me in the comments. But they were going to try and do that. They were going to try and nurture the talent over there with first team football, bring the crop back, the best of the crop. And if you could identify a player who actually came through the other team's ranks, we would have first refusal on them. So I can see it working really, really well. And I think that, the young players would, far more welcome a trip elsewhere to try and get the development than playing in the fifth tier, Peter.
I mean, look at people like Dembele and Okoflex and stuff like that. There was sort of progression to the first team, but it just seemed they were getting thrown in at a time where it was like sort of, there was either the league was done or it was desperation stuff or whatever. So like, I think to be a big club, a club that's run well, you buy well and you loan well. And because you want to start bringing these players through, it just stops you going out and buying, a new left back or a new midfielder, a new forward when you've got them in the building, and it's not cost you anything. So and listen, as Celtic fans, I don't care what money gets spent for a player. If a £5 million striker comes in and flops, I would rather the young guy goes in. If a young guy goes in and plays well, then I prefer that. I've not got an issue with youngsters coming through. You just want to see them doing well and playing. So if they're not getting that game time in the B team, then it'd be good to have one or two clubs that we could farm them out to get time in the legs, experience, bulk them up a bit, get them used to professional higher standard football, and hopefully when they come back, then the jump won't be too big. So I think that's something we really need to look. I think we should have been doing that for years, but that should be something that we're really pursuing going forward.
It kind of bridges the gap, doesn't it, between the B team, which in effect is a kind of youth setup, and the first team. They're not going to be ready. They won't be able to jump from fifth tier to first team at Celtic. You need to bridge the gap. And if we can do that with this kind of partnership, and as you say, maybe a couple of partnerships like this, I'm all for it, because I would much rather see our players progressing on a regular basis as well. Cameron Donaldson comes in. What's our thoughts on Rocco Vata potentially going out on loan to Aberdeen? Personally think that's a really good move for the boy if he gets the minutes. Well, I was reading about this actually today on the socials, Peter. He's a guy who I probably expected, along with maybe the aforementioned Ben McPherson and a few others, to be in and around the first team squad. If he gets a loan move to Aberdeen, then I think it would be a great one for him. We're going to have to keep an eye on this homegrown quota. We are going to have to do that, because putting players out means they can't sit on our bench for the Champions League squad. But Rocco Vata, he's at that point where he started coming into the team, the first team. He made his debut, I think it was at Easter Road. He's played a few games now. How many games is he going to play this season? If it's not going to be 20 or 30, it'd be better to go out on loan. And I've said it before, Peter. I like the idea of putting players out to a fellow league club, so that they're playing the same level that they're going to be playing when they come back to you, and they might damage the opposition. I think it would be a good move for them.
100%. I agree. I think Aberdeen, third in the league, play good football under Barry Robson. It'll toughen him up going up there. I mean, he's a big guy anyway, but just to play the games, the hard games that you're not really going to get at Celtic at his level. He's probably going to come on the last couple of minutes of a game, 5 minutes and stuff. That's just no good for a young guy. So I get out there, and Aberdeen will be a brilliant club. And like you say, we've got plenty of a huge squad. So loan some players out, and they can do damage to your rivals, and obviously can't play against you. So I don't see the even thought process of not doing it. But I think him. Try to think who else. I think we should be looking to get a few other boys out on loan as well, because we've got such a big squad. But it's good to do it in Scotland, because that is the level that they're going to play. That it's the players they're going to come up against week to week. So it shouldn't be a surprise for them if and when they come back to Celtic. So I think it'd be a really good move. It just tells you where Rodgers is thinking as, maybe, because you would think that he may be a guy that would try and bed a guy like Vata in, maybe here and there, but possibly he's looking to bring more quality in that side, and it might put somebody like Vata down the pecking order. So I think if that is the case, then it'd be better getting out.
Yeah, and the fact we've brought in another couple of right wingers probably doesn't help him, which is quite a sad state of affairs at any football club when you're producing your own players, that you bring someone in and it kind of blocks that pathway. But Drew, I actually get your point here. Ideguchi and Kobayashi on loan to Hibs or Aberdeen would be good. I get your point, because I think there's been that they've not been able to transition into the Scottish game yet, these two players, and I know Ideguchi's already out on loan back to his homeland. It was almost like you're thrown in the towel, I felt, when you loaned them back to a Japanese club, Peter, because it's not worked out in Scotland, go back to Japan. And it will be disappointing for Ideguchi, because he's tried his luck in Europe a few times now. Obviously, he had a move earlier in his career to Spain. He moved to Leeds, and now the transfer to Celtic hasn't worked out. But yeah, Kobayashi, I totally get it, but I actually think we're going to keep Kobayashi as part of the squad, and Stephen Welsh will be that player that moves on. Boss and Lowell would really benefit from a loan move. If you can't get rid of Ayeti on a permanent, then, you know, who's going to take Ayeti? Ross County might want him. James McCarthy. These are players that can't stay in the building, Peter. You've got to move them on. You know, he played the equivalent of 5 games of football in the 2 seasons that he's played with Celtic. It's just, you know, you cannot sustain that as a football club. Another thing I want to talk about, and bring your comments in. I'm really keen to get your comments involved here. Here we go. Alan Moods, get Vata, Lawwell and Summers out on loan to play minimum 30 games at a decent level. That's what we're talking about, Alan. Get the game time in there and they will learn and develop a hell of a lot more than just training and playing a few games here and there. Scottish away days look as though they're going to look a wee bit different, Peter. The first club really to cut allocation was Rangers, of course, and Hearts have announced that they're doing it. There's talk Aberdeen are going to do it. They're justifying it by saying that you know, they've got season ticket, record season ticket sales, and they've got waiting lists, and they want to maximise the amount of season tickets to their own fans, so they're minimising the away allocation. What do you think it's doing to the game, though? What do you think it's doing to the away day? You know, I said it before, and some of the responses came through saying they don't care, and why should they? They should just look after themselves. But for the betterment of the game, there's going to come a time, Peter, when Hearts would be begging us to buy tickets from them, as will Aberdeen. That time will come back round in the fullness of time. And at that point, Celtic might say, oh, well, you know, we don't want any more tickets from you. I don't know. What do you think it's doing? Because people love their away days, don't they?
I know, I don't like the way it's going. Just sort of blocking people, xenophobia, blocking the opposition fans out, and just sort of sticking to your own fans. Just and to spite your own club as well. Like, again, like I think, like you said, it's short-term thinking, and I think we want to make this league. We really need to make this league better, and what would make it better is having full stands and full opposition fans to give that banter and to have you know, make the stadium a wee bit livelier, because when it's just sort of the home set of fans and it's not going their way, it's just sort of dead stadium. So I think you need that. That's the whole point of football, to have opposition fans, and do you know what I mean, to get it up them sort of thing when you're winning. So that's I think when you're talking about in a couple of years, I think that probably will happen. They'll probably come back, realise that the thinking's been too short term, they're losing money, and they'll be begging us to take that now a couple of stands again for that maybe 2 or 4 times during the season with both sets of Rangers and Celtic fans. So it's very short term thinking, like it usually is in Scotland, and it'll be interesting in a couple of years to see how that goes. But I think they should be. I don't know why all these clubs are getting on this bandwagon of want to cut support for the opposition, and it's just a weird one to me. I can't really explain it.
I mean, what they'll have is obviously the figures of the away allocation and sales for however many years they've kept the data, Peter, and they'll know that there are certain clubs who will never sell out their allocation. So I totally get it. You know, you would then cut that back, but the demand for these tickets is huge. You know, the demand for tickets for Celtic games at Tynecastle, at Ibrox, at Pittodrie, it's massive, and at Rugby Park. You know, but you know, this is a stance that they're taking, and it is very much like every man for themselves at the moment, Peter. If that's the case, then as you say, when it comes to fruition and Celtic are in control of the situation, then I'm pretty sure that we'll think back to these moments and think, well, that was not in the best interest of Celtic fans. Therefore, we're going to be treating you, you know, with the same kind of level of contempt.
I would hope that if and when it does come around, that Celtic don't act like that and actually act like the bigger club and bigger person. But when it comes to that situation, that Celtic can get guarantees in place that it won't come around again, so they can guarantee that, you know, these clubs can't then start slashing allocations again. It's like, give us this amount of fans each time, or nothing, sort of thing, because we'll be in that position of strength at that time. But I suppose the way I would think as well, like you would want Celtic to just say, do you know what? You've made your bed, you have to lie in it. But at the same time, in the other hand, you sort of want them to be the bigger person and go, that's fine, we'll accept it this time. But when it comes round, when your hands out are begging us to come back, then we want guarantees that it won't happen again.
Because how often do you actually, clinch the title at your own patch, on your own patch? It doesn't happen all that often. I remember the first 9 in a row, I think something like 7 or 8 of them were at away grounds, and you want the ground to be packed with Celtic fans as well, and it's not going to happen. People might think that's me being selfish. Robert Wallace, out of the 5 players signed who are starters, that's what we're talking about today. I actually think that Norovsky is a starter. I think that the battle is between him and Starfelt to partner Cameron Carter-Vickers, and we need that. Centre half hasn't been a problematic position for Celtic over the last few years. We have indeed had the best defensive record domestically, Peter, so I'm not going to say that. But what I have felt is that the backups haven't been there. So what we've had initially is Chris Jullien was still in the building. Stephen Welsh was there. We brought in Maurice Jens. Kobayashi comes in, and you think, well, he's going to be the guy to fill that gap. He's going to be the future to push for a jersey. And none of that's kind of worked out. None of it's worked out. So we've gone back out and we've spent fairly big for Celtic, 4.3 million quid on a player. And I spoke about this as well the other day, from Legia Warsaw, Artur Boruc, Jakanowski, Darius Dovcek, and Josip Juranovic. Of the previous 4 players were signed from that club. Who was your favourite, Peter, and why?
Boruc, without a doubt. I think I heard somebody saying that the other day. I mean, he's an icon. I mean, it's just the antics that he gets up to, the saves he pull. I mean, I remember, I think I went down to the Fulham ground, Craven Cottage, when I can't remember where it was, when Gordon Strachan had just come in. And I think Boruc had just signed, if I'm not mistaken. Because I think it was Strachan that signed Boruc, wasn't it?
It was, aye. Yep.
And I'm sure that was his first pre-season game, and I just like the look of him straight. There's certain players that you just like the look of straight away. And when you see him, he just started making saves that you just hadn't seen certain keepers making before. And you're like, hold on, this is sort of a different level. And it was, I heard the story you were saying about Strachan saying this, he could be world class. And it was world class at points. He made world class saves. I loved him. I felt so comfortable with him in goals. He didn't make very many mistakes. He was commanding, made unbelievable saves. So I think he's the clear standout for me. It could have been possibly Juranovic if he stayed. But again, you have to put your time in with Celtic. You can't just come for a year and then leave, or 18 months and leave and be considered a legend. You have to actually put a bit of time in and win some major trophies.
Absolutely. I remember the signing of the 2 Polish internationalists, Jackie and Duvcek. I remember it well. It was quite exciting back then, Peter, because, signing continental players wasn't the done thing. We didn't do it that often. I think prior to those 2 players, there was a player called Johannes Edvaldsson, who had played for Celtic. And then previous to that, there was actually a goalkeeper called Bent Martin, who came in. I think he only played 1 game. We had played his side in Europe and then we signed them. But there weren't many players from outside, our country that played. And I think that when you look at those 2 Poles coming in, and I think back to the 80s, you think back fondly on Jackie, and it's like what you're saying there. You ask yourself why, because he didn't actually contribute a huge amount, but he just had this playboy cult iconic status, right? And I remember, when he came in, he was 650 grand. It was on the back of who signing for Rangers when he promised to sign for us. This was like the replacement striker for him. And he was a player who had played at the 1986 World Cup. You'll remember England played Poland in the World Cup. And he was the guy everybody was talking about going into this World Cup. He would have been 23, I think, at the time. And they were particularly keen on him in Italy. They ran in the Gazzetta dello Sport, they ran a team of the world team, a world 11. And the shortlist for the number 10 included players like Maradona, Michel Platini, and Darius Jakonowski. He was in there. He was so highly rated. Inter Milan wanted to buy him after the World Cup. Atletico Madrid wanted to buy him. But I think he was fond of a night out. I think he liked a night out and all of that. And he never really achieved what he should have done. You know, his potential was massive. When we got him, you got glimpses of it. That's what you got, glimpses. I remember a pre-season game, Dynamo Moscow at Celtic Park. He scored a goal that was sensational. And you were asking yourself, what can this guy achieve for us? It looked really, really good. By the end of the season, however, we were rotten. We were absolutely rotten. He had scored against Rangers. If you watch the goal back, it was a one each game. The ball hits the post, hits his shin and goes in, but it's still a goal in a derby game. And then, of course, there was a Partizan Belgrade night where he scored 4 goals in the 5-4 game. But, you know, he won nothing for Celtic. He ended up going to Bristol City after he left us. And, you know, for a player who was wanted by Inter Milan to end up playing that level of football, it's a shame. And I think our new signing is going to do a lot better than Jackie. But for some reason, Peter, these broken, fragile footballers who don't try as hard seem to get a lot of love from football fans. Why do you think that is? Because
you can see that they are better than half the players. It's just they just don't have that, you know, the mental fortitude, the application of their game. It's like you can see that they can be the best. They can be better than everybody else, but they just don't. And I think people are just always attracted to that wee, you know, that wee player with a flick of the switch that can lose it. I mean, look at Zidane. Do you know what I mean? Like headbutts and stuff. And I think, I mean, I might be mistaken. I'm sure there's some outliers, but it seems to be the best players, the most maverick players who just get that something, that red mist in them. And that's where they talk about the flawed genius and stuff. So a bit of Paddy McCourt in there, a wee bit of flawed genius. But I know it's I don't know why people take to them. I think, like you said, the other day, it's because they drink and they smoke and they do things that athletes probably shouldn't do, that we all do or we have done. And I think that you just sort of connect with them in that sense.
Yeah, they're a bit broken. They're a wee bit more human than the particularly in the modern game. And you know, the cult icon's probably dying out due to the fact that footballers are completely different these days, aren't they? They're differently built. Plunge McNugget, if somebody offers me 25k a week to do nothing, I'm taking it. I think, you know, we've got a couple of guys, I don't know their wages exactly, but McCarthy's one of them, not contributing. Ayeti's another one, big signing, big name signing. I think Ayeti's on 16, 17 grand, something like that. So, yeah, I get it. I do get it. But what they probably should, and in particular, Yeti at his stage of his career, Peter, is you've got to play football. You've got to keep playing football. McCarthy, he's got 3 years left on his deal. He's not playing football. He can sit and collect his wages. And there's been some examples of that over the years.
That is just crazy. That's still crazy with that deal, that he's still on such a long deal.
Yeah, I know. And when you look at the minutes, it was all there, right? So in the 5 years, and I have mentioned this before, in the 5 years before he signed for Celtic, he had played for Crystal Palace and Everton. And in those 5 years, if you look at the minutes played, he averaged 9 games a season for 5 seasons. It comes to Celtic, he's now averaged 5 games a season for 2 seasons. Based on minutes played. So the equivalent of 5 full 90-minute games. So it's bizarre, but it's something that Brendan Rodgers has inherited, and I hope that he's able to deal with it. It's nothing personal. I know that it was his dream to play for Celtic, but go and play somewhere else. Lila Bada, I want to talk a wee bit about him, because when we were coming into this pre-season, kind of fearfully losing maybe a couple of our star players, Peter, he was one that I fully expected to lose. You know, there had been chat about his ambition to play elsewhere. Clubs were interested. And I know it's only pre-season in inverted commas, but he's looked very, very good. There's a directness about him. And I think that under Brendan Rodgers, he could absolutely fly this season. And I hope that we do keep him. Do you think this is going to be almost the breakout season for Abada?
Well, I mean, if you're looking at people that are going to leave, you probably fancy that Abada to leave probably the first out the door, because there was so much talk about him, and especially before somebody like Jota. I definitely, if I close my eyes and think who would have seen this season, it would have been Jota instead of Abada, because you just thought he was gone. But we have lost Jota, and you look at Abada and the way he's played in that, and he's a bit sort of like streaky. Like sometimes he can start a game and he's just terrible, but in there's other games that he's like the best player on the pitch, and he's so direct and he makes so many things happen. And you just think if you could do that, 70, 80 minutes a game, then you're unplayable. So I'm really looking forward to seeing, and I'm excited that that there's been talk of Rodgers having a word in his ear and that he's going to stay. And I think it could be the time where he goes, right, it's on me. I'm a starter in this team, and it could sort of be a breakout season, like you said. So I'm excited to see what he can offer. And he's going to be playing at a really good high level and probably getting a lot more minutes than he's used to. So I hope that he's ready for it and he can grab the chance with both hands.
Yeah, I hope so. I think he could be. My tip last season, my tip was Hatate. I'd seen enough since he had joined in January to see he was going to have a big season. And my tip this season is Abada. So do not announce that he's signed for somebody else in the next 7 days, please. Kenny, 67, Big Jackie had amazing ability, says Kenny. Watching his skill closely from down the front of the jungle was mesmerising at times, but a waste of talent. Yeah, he was. And he did come back to Celtic to play one of the charity games. I think it was Lubo's Legends versus Henrik's Heroes, maybe. And he made an appearance. He was looking well. But we are fond of these iconic cult players. Thanks, everybody, for getting involved. It's been brilliant to catch up with Peter there. We are going to be live. We'll do our normal bulletin tomorrow at 12:30, but we're going to be live tomorrow in Glasgow with Roy Aitken, who, of course, played alongside Jackie Jackanoski. I might ask Roy Aitken about Jackanoski, actually, just to see where did it all go wrong, and he'll be able to tell me. So Roy Aitken will be joining us tomorrow night. Last I checked, we had 9 tickets available. Single figures. It's going to be a sellout. It's effectively a sellout as it is. But the last few tickets are still available on the link under this video. If you want to come along and see us, then please feel free to do that. It'll be an absolute pleasure. We'll be raising a few quid for charity tomorrow night as well. Thanks, everybody, for getting involved. And thank you once again, Peter McGackie, for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.